Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, and score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello, you're listening to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to West Lothian's finest football team, Livingston Football Club, and proudly sponsored by Starnut Apparel. My name's Angus. Today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, how you doing, man?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's obviously a much better weekend than the previous weekend. Both our men's and women's sides recorded victories at the weekend. Obviously, the men's team have now progressed to the last 8 of the League Cup, albeit have a very difficult tie in store in the last 8 of the League Cup. And our women's side recorded it was a historic weekend for them, their first ever win in SWPL2, and they certainly did it in a bit of style and drama in the end as well, which that's the only way the women's side do it. It has to be a little bit dramatic in the end, doesn't it? So, fantastic weekend for the football club and both the teams. So, yeah, in really good spirits, mate. What about yourself?
Yeah, very much echoing that as well, Euan. Pleasing weekend coming off the back of that. Good victory for the men's side, a comfortable performance for us against Ayr United. It should have been a banana skin, and then obviously the women's team capitalising so well on that as well. But yeah, very pleasing, and that's all you can ask for from a weekend from the two teams. But yeah, we'll jump right into it. As always, you can search for Talk Livi on your preferred podcast streaming sites where you can follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also catch up on all our episodes that we've done to date.
We'll get the ball rolling by looking back at our League Cup tie with Ayr United as the Lions eased into the quarterfinals with a 2-0 victory.
Our women's side were on the road to take on Glasgow Women and would leave it late to secure their first win in the SWPL2. We'll look back at the game and the drama that unfolded.
And finally, I caught up with Matty Fairnie from the Longbangers podcast to look ahead to our trip to Easter Road to take on Hibs this weekend.
The Lions faced a banana skin tie against Ayr United as they look to book their place in the last 8 of the League Cup. Goals from Joel Newbley and Christian Montano would ease Livy into the next round, but they'll face a trip to Ibrox. Before we get on to that trip to Ibrox, Euan, what did you make of the game against Ayr?
Yeah, it wasn't the best game for the neutral. I would go by saying, I know you were on commentary at the weekend for the first time, and within the space of 10 minutes, you managed to see a Livingston goal. I've spent 2 full 90 minutes watching Livy and not seen even that many shots on target. So, well played, Angus. You're obviously a better Roman than I am. But,
Lucky Charms, I am.
But no, it was a solid performance. It was a really professional and solid performance is the best way I can put it. I believe Ayr maybe had 2 or 3 kind of regular first team starters out their side, and I think that probably showed quite a bit as well. But we talked about it in the preview, and we said that us getting an early goal really puts the tie in our favour and sets it up in, as I say, it sets it up in our favour where we can almost draw Ayr United out a little bit and try and play how we would normally play kind of week on week in our Premiership games, which is sitting back, kind of soaking pressure and then trying to break and attack. And we got that early goal. It comes through a brilliant flick on from Curtis Guthrie. I don't think the goal happens if he doesn't win that initial flick on, and Christian Montano's bombed in behind. He's rolled the ball across the face of goal, and Joel Newbley's got an easy tap in to make it 1-0. Really, really well worked by us, and kind of, as I say, got that early goal, which settles us into that tie, because again, we touched on it in the preview, when we have played lower league opposition and the onus is on us, we have struggled the longer the game goes on to break down these sides. So it was good that we got that early lead. There wasn't an awful lot to talk about in the first half other than the goal. I think Aidan McGeady had a decent strike, which is straight at Shamal George down the opposite end, and then Stephen Kelly had a free kick, which was a comfortable save as well. But other than that, there really wasn't a lot in that first half. Second half, I think, as you'd expect, it's a knockout cup tie. The game started to get a little bit more stretched end to end. Stephen Kelly had an effort from the edge of the box that was pulled back to him. He's put it well over the crossbar. Montano got in behind as well, and he's just kind of stumbled on the ball a little bit. I think it was Stephen Kelly that played him in. And probably the only real clear chance that Ayr United had was their left back getting forward and the ball's taken a little nick as it's gone through, and Shamal George has saved it. But other than that, I can't really think of any real clear-cut opportunities that Ayr United had. Mikey Devlin had a header that went well wide. Then Montano's managed to make it 2-0. Great little bit of pressing, and I'll touch on Scott Pittman's impact when he came on the park, but the press is initiated by the likes of Jamie Brandon, Pittman. The ball's broke to Jason Holt. He's rolled it into the path of Montano, and he has got a bit fortunate. I think it's his initial shots come back off the goalkeeper and then hit him and kind of trickled over the goal line in the end. And Montano could have had a second goal when the ball's been pulled back by Bruce Anderson, and it's a decent save. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of kind of real clear-cut opportunities for both sides in the game, but I think we were, best way I can put it, I think we were really in control for the majority of the 90 minutes. And as we touched on, it was a banana skin tie, which we've managed to come through unscathed and kind of unthreatened, really, for the vast majority of the game. So you can't really complain too much. And another clean sheet as well, which we've made a habit of so far this season.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most comfortable we've looked against the lower league opposition for quite a while. Maybe not the most
championship side as well, not just like a kind of League One, League Two, a championship side as well. Aye.
Yeah, seeing like how we got on against like Inverness, I think Rafa gave us a really couple of tough games over the last few years and that as well. I think that was the thing that kind of going into the game you're maybe a little bit concerned about, was that, you know, it's going to be another one of those ones where, you know, it really doesn't seem that we're the Premiership side playing against a team who is in the league below. But I do think you could see that gap there, although, you know, maybe it wasn't, you know, us carving them open with chances and stuff like that. I do think that we were incredibly comfortable throughout the whole game. I do think that Aidan McGeady actually was really, really good for them, to be fair. I think that he, you know, showed that he did have that quality in him. You could tell that he'd been playing at those higher levels, just like the wee drops of the shoulder and stuff that he was doing. But other than that,
he looked different gravy, and he dropped a little bit deeper second half and was getting on the ball even more. And you could tell that the guys played at a much higher level, and he should be an absolute standout every week in the Championship, I would assume. I was chatting to Matty about that, because obviously he was at Hibs last year, and he would do a job for most Premiership sides for sure. Yeah,
even though he's like lost like that yard of pace and stuff like that, you can still see just by the speed of, like, you know, dropping the shoulder, you know, a couple of turns and all of that, he's played at that kind of higher level. But yeah, I think that we did well to kind of nullify that. We didn't let him, you know, progress too far up the pitch to, you know, cause us real damage and stuff like that as well. And I think it was a solid defensive display from us. You know, the back line continuing to look pretty solid. I think especially after last week, where we probably conceded a couple of poor goals against Rangers. I think even from corners and set pieces that we seemed a lot better. Any deliveries that came in, we were dealing with them straight away, which, you know, probably wasn't the case at Ibrox, which you can't really afford to do. But yeah, very, very pleasing to see, you know, kind of a comfortable win into the hat for the next round. Obviously, you know, we're going to have to go and, you know, do something miraculous at Ibrox to make it through the next round. But pleased with what we've seen there, and, you know, it keeps up a decent start to the season, especially going into next week's game against Hibs as well.
Yeah, so talking about the starting 11, we mentioned maybe going for a slightly more attack-minded lineup. Davies kind of stuck to his guns a little bit. He's put Penrice out on the right-hand side, Montano on the left, same back three. And he's had Curtis Guthrie back up top as well. What did you make of that initial starting 11?
I wasn't too surprised, to be fair. I think that we'll be looking to go attacking. So like, so Stephen Kelly comes in, and then obviously two strikers up there. You're looking to be on the front foot. I think that maybe in that kind of term, it was maybe interesting to see what kind of style of play we'd maybe be going for. You know, kind of the ball's going up to Guthrie and they play. I guess we're always looking for the marauding runs of our wing backs, and I think that with that, you'd maybe be looking for, you know, maybe like some of Bruce Anderson, if you're looking for those kind of wide players to be cutting the ball back and stuff like that. Obviously, Anderson's just came off the back of that injury against Aberdeen due to the pitch and stuff, but so there's not really too much of a surprise there in terms of the personnel. And I think, you know, Shinnie and Holt have kind of solidified themselves as that midfield kind of pairing. I think Stephen Kelly was worthy of having a. I think he'd been disappointed if Stephen Kelly wasn't starting in that match just there. But yeah, not too many complaints. I think that, you know, up against here, you're going to be looking to take the advantage of it. And, you know, most of those players that we just kind of mentioned have played a part in the opening goal too.
Yeah, well, talking about players playing an impact in the opening goal, I think some of the subs played quite a crucial role in the second goal. The likes of Jamie Brandon came on for Penrice on the right-hand side. Scott Pittman, who I have to say has looked like the Scott Pittman of old this season when he has came off the bench or when he has been in the side, in my opinion. And Pitts looked like a man possessed when he came on, and he almost had, without touching the ball, had an kind of infectious attitude on the rest of the team, because we started hunting for the ball higher up the pitch, and that's how the second goal comes about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's exactly what you said. The Pittman of old, where, you know, there's like a random ball that's just kind of going loose, and then, you know, he somehow gets a foot to it, or he somehow gets in front of the player. He's able to win a free kick, or he's able to win a throw in, and that. And just that alone, you know, it relieves so much pressure. I think at that kind of stage when, you know, Ayr could probably still come back into the game or whatnot, having that extra boost, that energy boost as well, you know, somebody who's going to come on and win you the ball high up the pitch, it makes a massive difference, especially against a team like that where they're starting to, you know, maybe push a bit farther up the park to try and, you know, get back into the game. But you're, you know, forcing them to like be pinned back a little bit because of that, and knowing that the damage that we can cause going forward against them. I think that creates like an element of frustration for themselves as well. They're trying these passes, but there's just this wee guy roaming and buzzing about who's just nicking it off them every time, and they just can't get out of their own half. And yeah, it was very pleasing to see. I think that, you know, last season was maybe not the best from Pitts, kind of the best return from him. I think maybe in the start of the season, people were kind of thinking, is he going to be following at the team more regularly? But, you know, I think this has maybe been a good thing for him. Maybe he's kind of taken that in and realised, you know, decided to put a wee bit more training or something like that, and kind of get him back to his usual standards, because he's been, you know, electric coming off the bench these last couple of games.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. As I say, he's really looked like that Scott Pittman of old, and I'm all for seeing that on the weekly basis, because as you say, you know, by Pitt's standards that he set while he was being at the football club, it was probably a drop-off last year. And I reckon he'd probably be the first to admit that as well, but he looks like he's got a lease of life once again, and that Scott Pittman's always going to be vital to what we do in terms of staying up in the league, in my opinion, over the course of a season, because of what he gives you, not necessarily with the ball, but see what he does off the ball is just quite frightening at times when you kind of sit and watch him in isolation. But it was obviously a comfortable afternoon in the end, 2-0 victory. It's seen us get a last 8 tie, which I think any Livingston fan could have predicted, away to Ibrox to take on Rangers. What do you make of the draw?
I, for one, Euan, I am stunned that the Institute of Rangers Football Club got arguably the easiest draw at home. If it was us or Ross County, I don't think, you know, like, mental, isn't it, Euan? Like, how does it keep on happening? And, you know, we're under the lights at Ibrox, we're on front of the cameras of Viaplay as well. There's just so much to look forward to, right? I cannot be bothered going to Ibrox again this season. I thought we'd done our one and done essentially. You know, having to go there twice in a season's bad enough. Going again, don't know if I can be bothered with that. But yeah, hopefully we can go. We can give a bit of a good example of ourselves. Hopefully they're still struggling to, you know, break teams down. I've seen that they didn't have the best of times against Morton there. If the VAR's in fashion again, we might need to worry about some of a dodgy penalty given against them. I think that was quite interesting, that one that was given to them, that probably isn't given every other corner kick that's given in their matches. But hey, it's all part and parcel of the game against them. So we'll have to go there and hope for something miraculous, I would say.
I believe that's 3 of the last 6 years we've had Rangers in the last 8 of the League Cup. 1 game at Livi and 2 games at Ibrox. So it's a very familiar tie now, isn't it? But I'm going to be slightly different from yourself, saying don't bother going to Ibrox, blah de blah.
I didn't say don't bother. I just said I can't be bothered.
But I would really encourage fans to get along to Ibrox for the game. It's a quarter-final cup tie. Anything could happen on the evening. Rangers could possibly be having their eyes on European football the weeks either side of it. I would really encourage us to bring as big a support as possible to Ibrox to get behind the team, because it is quite sad when you see that there's 70 Livingston fans in the away end at Ibrox. It would be great if we could bring a few hundred at least, so that the players have got something to look out for in the stands when they're on the pitch, and have as vocal a support as possible at Ibrox. Because as I say, it's a one-off cup tie. You never know what can happen. We could cause a major upset on the night, but it's obviously a big ask. But yeah, I would encourage as many fans to get along as possible, because they need all the support you can get at times. So especially at these grounds, it would be really good to see as many fans get along as possible to back the team. But all in all, solid performance and into the last 8. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
The Real Lionesses made the trip to take on Glasgow Women this weekend. Late goals from Lauren Evans and Beth Mackay would see our women's side come from behind to claim their first win in the SWPL2 with a 2-1 victory. Angus, you were there to take the game in, and almost like how they wrapped up the league title in dramatic circumstances with late goals. They did it on numerous occasions last season. Of course, they were going to get their first win of the season in the SWPL2 with a late show, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Callum Carson tweeted it quite nicely that, how many times over the last couple of years that they've left it in dramatic fashion. So, it would only be fitting for them to win this game in the same kind of way. And, deservedly so. I think we would have been quite disappointed if we went away from that game, one, not taking anything from it, and then two, probably not winning it as well. I think that, again, it was quite a controlling performance from us. I think that if there was going to be one team to win it, it was going to be us. I think we really nullified Glasgow into very, very few chances. I think that there was, maybe only a few. I think there was a distant shot that was easily claimed by Shania in goals. And, they obviously get the goal as well, which is just from a deep free kick from their own half. And it just manages to bounce inside of our own box. And it's the last, I think Bargatti's managed to just get a toe to it and it goes in. And I think that was kind of against the run of play, and that I think we would have been disappointed going down a goal at that time. But I think that all the right signs were there from how we were trying to play. I think we were trying to play out from the back, which is interesting. I don't know if Shania's maybe the most comfortable kicking long from the ground. So we're really, really working it from, getting it to one of the 3 centre backs and then working it out there to either a midfielder who was dropping in deep or to a wing back. But it worked really, really well. We were doing really, really fantastic in there. I never knew that Jess Murphy would be a ball playing centre half, but here we are. I think that kind of cohesion really shows what's been kind of going on in the training ground and how they've been working on these extra things to to play out from the back and stuff like that, analysing that something may be necessary to work on due to the personnel and stuff like that. And full credit to the team, because it was genuinely really, really good to watch. There was an instance in the first half where we played out a goal kick and it went all the way up to the 18-yard box of the opposition. Came back a little bit for Natasha Frew to actually run on to. I think she beat a couple of players and had a shot, and it just kind of went over. And it's that kind of stuff that was just really, really kind of good to watch. And it was good to see, the effect that Mike's had on the team, him and Jordan, what they've been working on in the training ground and that. I think as well, going into that second half, it could have been easy for us to go a goal down and, for the heads to drop, but we still continue to do the correct stuff. We were, passing the ball around very nicely. We weren't rushing things. It wasn't an instance of, let's get the ball as far forward as quickly as possible as we can. I think out on starting off on the right, but then ended up on the left was Beth Mackay, and I think that she had an absolutely tremendous game. She was getting in front of the players. She was beating them. Her deliveries were excellent, and I think she got fouled about a dozen times, Euan, as well. Like she'll be coming away from this game all battered and bruised for sure. She's really, really stepped up. I've been really, really impressed with her this season. She seems to have been, a real asset in these two games to start with. And I think, if she can continue this, she's going to be, a really, really great player for us. A couple of instances, where she's got down the line. I think there's a great cross that she's put in, and Sharon Hughes-Lee's on coming to it, and it maybe just misses her. Obviously, we're always a threat from kind of set pieces. There's one that Jess has that the goalkeeper kind of misjudges. She heads it over her, and then the Glasgow Women's player is able to clear it off the line. And it seems like when you're getting that kind of close, that it's maybe not going to be your day, even though you're applying yourselves in the right manner and stuff like that. But we would get our goal in the end. Again, really good patient play. I think that this is something in the midfield that's really been worked on as well. Courtney McAvoy, very calm on the ball, happy to take it in under pressure and, spread the play out, makes its way out to Sharon Hughes-Lee, who puts that great cross in. Lauren Evans does what she was brought in to do and scores a great header to get us back into it, to equalise it, to make 1-1. And then from there on, I think that the pressure was on the home side, and we were kind of going for that winner. And I think it comes from, a ball over the top. I think it's Lucy who's trying to run onto it, forces the goalkeeper to come off her line, clear it. The clearance drops to Beth, who's maybe about 40 yards out from goal. She just hits it, and it's kind of poetic. It was like what you'd kind of like see like in a movie, where it's like the defenders are all scrambling back to the line, and it's just like bodies just like flying in the air to try and like claw the ball out, and it just hits the back of the net. And an absolute incredible moment. Everybody just kind of like erupted into like jubilation and stuff. It was just a really kind of special moment. And based off of the performance, there was no better person to win it than Beth, who really deserved it with a great player of the match performance. So yeah, very, very pleasing. And I think that the team played really well, and I think they got their just rewards in the end.
Yeah, certainly I wasn't able to make the game, but reading your match report, it does seem like the girls managed to get what they probably deserved from the game, which was the 3 points in the end. But to touch on a couple of points you made, going back to a back three, which is something we've obviously become accustomed to over the last couple of seasons, certainly when Paul Giaconelli was in charge. But you kind of touched on that more patient side of it, and we spoke about it probably at length the last couple of seasons when we've been reviewing the women's side, that they're capable of that. They had the players that were more capable of that, and it was just a case of producing that maybe on a more regular basis. And certainly, as you mentioned, it seems like something that Mike and Jordan have really worked on over the close season to try and almost put that blueprint in place for the side when they are on the pitch every week, that's the way he wants them to try and play.
Yeah, for sure. We're not kind of, and that game there was a good example of not kind of just seeing it in like bits and spells there. Obviously, we can mix things up when we need to, but I think that the clear philosophy is, kind of maintaining possession and, opening up those channels, because, there's plenty of talented footballers in that team there. You look at that middle of the park, Courtney McAvoy, Hannah Davey, and, Brogan Anderson, who was sitting in the hole, who, did a solid enough job there. I think it maybe took a 10-15 minutes to kind of get accustomed to the pace and the pressures of being in that kind of position. But, all decent enough footballers who, want to pass the ball out, and that players on the wings who are wanting to get on the ball and, maintain possession and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just good to see, and it's just very entertaining to watch that, we're able to kind of employ this kind of football quite early on as well. And yeah, I think maybe it's like an element of belief that's also came in with maybe these new players and like the further coaching that's kind of came in as well, that there is that encouragement to to do these passes and stuff like that, rather than aiming for, it'd be easy for us to like go, oh, Lucy's in a channel there, let's aim for her pace and stuff like that. Oh, Ashley can turn this vendor and get in behind, or Anna Dickoff, who was played really well up front as well. I would say we can mix it up now, where it is that isn't the end game. It is, we'll get into these wee channels and stuff like that and actually work it into the box rather than just being hopeful at times.
You mentioned kind of one individual display in particular, Beth Mackay, who did get player of the match in the end, and obviously the dramatic late winner, which I'm sure would go brilliant with some Titanic music, by the way you're describing it. But Beth really seemed to have kicked on so far this season. Beth signed kind of maybe October time, I think, last year. And you kind of saw little glimpses from her over the course of the season. She chipped in with a few goals. You could obviously see she had a lot of technical ability, but she seems to have really thrived with us stepping up a division.
Yeah, it's very interesting in that kind of way that, taking that step up and, assuming, like a lot better player for it. I think you're really seeing now that level that she's played at, not only, in football, but in futsal as well.
Yeah.
Her close control has been absolutely incredible. I think that there was an instance on Sunday there where she's kind of cornered by like 3 players and she does like a wee scoop turn and just wedges right between the 3 of them and puts in a great cross. But yeah, she's been absolutely tremendous. That left foot, I'm always a fan of a left-footed player, Euan. Having that, the deliveries that she's putting in as well has been excellent. And yeah, it's good to see like a very energetic winger. She's getting up and down the park. She was working tirelessly there, taking a few bruises as well. I mean, the amount of fouls that she gained for us was incredible. And, not once was she deterred. And I think that's a great sign of her character too.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the futsal aspect, and it's quite evident because technically our close control and everything like that, I've always been really impressed with that. And then when you find out she's played a lot of futsal before, it makes so much sense, doesn't it? But next game for the girls, it's a home game at home to Boroughmuir Thistle, I believe. A little bit tasty, given that Mike was there last year. What are you reckoning for that game?
Yeah, well, I think that what we're kind of seeing right now is that the league's quite tight. I think that Boroughmuir, I think they were beat 2-1 off of Glasgow Women and lost 1-0 to Kilmarnock just at the weekend there. But I think that indicates that, how tight the league is, that, it's all kind of like similar kind of like score lines where, it's only a goal or 2 that's in it. And it's all about how you apply yourself or take your chances on the day. So it'll be an interesting one for sure. And I hope that, we can take the positives from the performance that we had there. And there's no reason that we can't replicate that again, as long as we're, applying ourselves correctly, making sure that we're protecting the ball and, doing the right things at the right times and stuff like that as well. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting game, another competitive one, and it'll be one that will be good to watch. Obviously, there might be an added incentive for maybe some of the former kind of players playing against their own teams as well as Mike playing against one of his former clubs. But yeah, I think it has all the makings for making a decent game, and that plenty of people should be encouraged to come down to.
Yeah, I would really encourage anyone to get down to the game to cheer on the girls. As you say, it's a step up, so I'm sure they'll appreciate as much support as they can over the course of the season. And obviously, just to make it very clear, with your season ticket, you don't need to pay at the gate, you don't need to pay through the fan base app. But if you don't have a season ticket, I think it's £4 through the fan base app, and you can download your ticket that way. So I would encourage anyone to get along to cheer on the girls. I'm delighted to welcome Matty Fairnie from the Longbangers podcast back on to Talk Livi. Matty, how you doing, mate?
Very good, mate. Yeah, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on. Yeah, you good?
I'm really good, mate. Really good. Last time I saw you was at Open Goal, and it was just after that result over in Andorra. It's been consistently inconsistent since then, hasn't it?
What I'm delighted about that is that I think I very confidently said that we would turn over in the second leg. Joe, with a degree of confidence that belied how I was really feeling, if I'm totally honest. So I'm glad I never ended up with egg on my face after that one.
I know that would have been terrible for the next time you turn up on it, wouldn't it? But now, kind of last season was very up and down. is probably the best way to put it. But Hibs would end up finishing 5th, which would see them into the qualifiers for the Conference League. Overall, how would you look back at last season? Obviously, Lee Johnson's first season in charge as well.
I think you could probably call it a mitigated success, right? So if you'd asked at the start of the season, if you finished 5th, would folk have been happy with it? Probably everybody would have said no. Well, Hibs fans would have said no, because we all have sort of ideas of our station with these things, right? 5th is probably where our budget puts us, but we really like to be 3rd or 4th. But we had just horrendous injuries. Like a lot of teams had injuries last season, and it's not like Hibs are unique in that respect.
Yours were all really in the forward area, though. It was like one area of the pitch. Hearts had a lot of injuries as well, but it was almost spread out a little bit, so it didn't quite impact like one area of the team the way it did with you guys.
Aye, and it was key players as well. So McGeady was like one of our big summer signings, and I think he maybe played, lucky if he got 10 games for us over the course of the season. Kevin Nisbet missed up until almost Christmas, and he finished our top scorer. So, like if he'd been available all season, what a difference he would have made. Kyle McGuinness, who I think has already made more starts for Kilmarnock than he made in 4 years at Hibs, or 3 years at Hibs, just about. There was injuries all over the pitch. The forward areas were particularly. Martin Boyle was the other big one. Like he did his ACL, and he was our big summer signing. And then of course we just lost him for the whole year. So when you put all that into context, Lee Johnson, and we had shocking recruitment, which is the other thing. So in last summer, our recruitment was terrible. In January, we had to do a little bit of a rebuild at that point, shed a load of players and bring in a couple of key ones. So he did turn it around. We finished the season pretty strongly, and I think we were unlucky not to get 3rd in the end. Like we missed a penalty Pataudry in a game we absolutely battered Aberdeen. And even the last game of the season at Tynecastle, we finished 1-1, but we battered Hearts for most of that. Pataudry last like 5 minutes, but we were just like, this isn't happening. And we had a wee spell in the game. It was just one of those seasons, but it was all right in the end.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where, as you say, a lot of injuries in one area. Like you mentioned McGeady there. I saw McGeady at the weekend playing for Ayr United, and I have no doubts that he would have done a brilliant job for Hibs, because he looked like a genuine class above even some of our players on the park. Like he was absolute tip top, and you could see that he's played at a high level. So I could only imagine, like, even if you got him for double the amount of games that you got him. For example, last year, and you mentioned Nisbet as well as a good example, but summer window's seen a bit more recruitment, a few high profile names like Dylan Levitt's come in, Dylan Vente, who I believe the club spent close to £1 million on, which is unheard of for clubs outside the old firm. Adam Lafondra and Will Fish coming back in on loan. What have you made of that summer transfer business so far?
It looks good. Ironically, Dylan Levitt looks like he's going to be out for a period of time now as well. He took a nasty injury in Switzerland in midweek there. So that's unfortunate, because I really like the look at him. Dylan Vente up front, he's got a couple of goals already, which is great, because when a striker comes in, you don't want them having a run of games without a goal, with everybody having that, he'll be all right once he gets a goal kind of chat. Like he's got a couple of goals in already. We had Euan come back permanently as well.
Yeah, that one as well.
Which is good. Will Fish, I think, is a level above Hibs. Like he's not a great start to the season, but I think he'll grow into the team as he did last season. So I think overall the work that's been done has been pretty good. Yeah, Dylan, them all on the pitch.
Dylan Levitt's one. He's a Hibs type of player. I always kind of like, he has that kind of vibe about him. But it'll be interesting to see how Will Fish plays at the weekend, given he'll be getting chased by some lions over the weekend. The start of this campaign has almost been a follow-on from last year, hasn't it? It's been consistently inconsistent. You've had some tremendous performances in Europe, in particular the Laverne tie just there, both home and away, but then it's been followed up with some very sketchy displays domestically. Can you put your finger on why Hibs have been so inconsistent, or is it just the manager? Because he seems to have this track record, I've said this to you before, across his entire managerial career, where he's consistently inconsistent.
Well, he gets the nickname Streaky Lee, doesn't he? But the streaks, I suppose, he goes like 10 games without a win, and then he'll no lose for 10 games, and he's sort of like that through his career. But now you just don't know what Hibs are going to turn up. So I think when it's a big game, I think he's doing quite well at getting the players up for it. Like when we had to dig out a result against Andorra, and we took care of them quite comfortably. Yeah. The Luzerne game, home and away, we were terrific. But then St Mirren and the Motherwell games, like they would get football stopped. If that was your only experience of watching football, you'd go, that's no for me. And you sometimes you wonder why or how the same team can put out such different performances. Like, the manager definitely has to take some responsibility. Like, ultimately, that's his job to get the team playing. But I think the players, I don't know whether they play within themselves, whether they're playing with their eye on the European game that's coming up, or if they're leggy after having had like a big game in midweek and just not quite used to the demands of the Sunday, Thursday football. But it's early in the season, you'd think like the top athletes, they should be able to kind of cope with that, I think.
Yeah, it's weird, the Thursday, Sunday thing, because if you play Wednesday, Saturday, you know, albeit that's maybe the Champions League or something like that, it's the exact same break in time, but there doesn't seem to be as big a hype about Wednesday, Saturday
weird,
to the Thursday, Sunday. I don't understand it. There's never that big a hype made about it.
I think I think when you have the Wednesday, Saturdays, so if the Champions League teams tend to have bigger squads, don't they? Like the bigger clubs with the bigger squads, so they can cope with it. When they come back to the domestic football, they can rotate the squad. Hibs aren't good enough throughout the squad to do that. Like we started on Saturday against Wraith Rovers here with Jimmy Jeggo and Josh Campbell was our midfield too, and you know I wanted to put nails in my eyes watching them, and you know they're both and with better players around them, they're both more than adequate for Hibs. It's not like they're terrible players, but I mean, Jesus, it was painful.
Well, Josh Campbell was probably one of your shining lights last year, actually, wasn't he? So, you know, he's obviously a good footballer in there. But you mentioned the manager there. He's certainly a Marmite character, would probably be the best way of putting it. I know when we were doing Open Goal, you kind of said he was on the 60-40 split in terms of favour of getting sacked, probably with Hibs support after the result in Andorra. Do you reckon the performances in Europe since then have probably seen him stay in his job, or certainly kind of calm down that pressure almost?
I think so. It's funny that there's actually like a big debate or discussion going on it on Hibs.net now, because I'd asked the question about whether it was time for folk to just get behind him with the kind of the view that he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Because what you've got just now is a chunk of the support that are going, he has to win on Saturday, and if he doesn't win on, like if he didn't beat Livingston, he needs to go. And then we'll get through that game, right? And I'm not saying we're going to beat Livingston, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Take it back to the Laverne game. We have to beat Laverne, or at least get knocked out, or he'll lose his job. So he gets through that. Well, we need to beat Wraith Rovers on Saturday, or he needs to go. And then we beat them, and now it's like he needs to beat Livy, or he needs to go. And you're like if he's passing all these tests that you're putting in front of him, at some point you're going to have to just say, listen, let him have the next however many games, and let's see how we're looking in December, or you know, if we're not winning games for a long period of time, then it's probably fair to say it. But you can't jump game to game. But he doesn't do himself any favours with.
Very David Brent, isn't he?
That's what he gets a lot. And the funny thing is, I don't mind. I get what he's saying a lot of the time. It's just like a quirky way of saying it, and I find that you know there is a bit of him that I find quite endearing, and I warm to him, and like the lion thing that you mentioned. I get what you mean, and actually, if I was wanting to make a point to a player that I thought hadn't run fast enough, and you say, like, if a lion was chasing you, think you could have run faster? And they go, well, I would have done. And you think, well, that's what I'm wanting for you. It makes sense. It's not that ridiculous when you kind of break it down.
But it's when he uses words like gravitas, but he clearly doesn't know the meaning of gravitas.
He makes up words all the time, which is amazing. It's one of my favourite things to do. Is like, what word is he going to make up? Dynamism. I can't even say it. I think it was like. I can't say dynamism. Something like that. What are you talking about?
He does. He just has that. He oozes David Brent. But kind of looking ahead to the game on Saturday, obviously you guys have got a big tie in Europe on Wednesday at home to Aston Villa. So obviously I think a lot in terms of your team selection could depend on how that game goes. Because I imagine if you suffer a heavy defeat in the first leg, you might cut your losses for the second game and probably put out what I would say would be your strongest team on Saturday. Would you agree?
Because we've lost the first two games in the league, we're going to have to play a strong team on Saturday, irrespective of what we do on Wednesday night. I think, I don't know if we've got 10 defenders on the books to play on Wednesday night. You know, like if I just have a 10-0-0 formation, sort of evolving the Craig Levine tactic and not having any forwards by having no forwards and no midfielders and just shutting up shop for 90 minutes. But I don't think that's Johnson's way. I think he'll go for it in both games. I think he's that sort of character that he'll go, nothing to lose. Like, it doesn't really matter what happens on Wednesday. Nobody's expecting us to get through that tie. Everybody's going to go, well, like Aston Villa's squad's worth something like 500 million. No, the squad, their first team, something like £500 million they've spent on it. And that's including John McGinn, who was only like 2 and a bit million from us.
That's like, the only reason you guys are really looking forward to it, isn't it? Your social media guys have got to have their John McGinn living again, haven't they?
We get to see that magnificent backside one more time.
So how would you expect Hibs to possibly line up against ourselves in terms of how have they been setting up kind of formation-wise since the start of the season?
Well, he played 4-4-2 at the weekend there, but we didn't look great with it, but he's also played 4-4-2 and we've looked no bad. I think what he likes to have is Boyle on one side, you and another, and Vente through the middle, right? So 3 up front, so that's sort of 4-3-3. With Levitt being missing for the midfield, we'll have Joe Newland there, and then Campbell and Jago. Maybe I don't think Jake Doyle Hayes is fit yet. Our midfield's going to be pretty weak. In defence, we're susceptible. We're still playing Lewis Stevenson left back. Paul Hanlon's still in there at centre half, and he struggles or has struggled against Livi's forwards in the last couple of seasons. So, like I say, I don't think we've got enough players to have the strength and depth to totally rotate it. I think when we play Livy, it will be close to our first team that we put out, and it will be that sort of 4-3-3 formation, I would expect.
You kind of mentioned there the obvious threats would be probably that front three, wouldn't it? Euan caused us a lot of problems in the game just before Christmas last year, and he scored a double over at our place as well. And everyone kind of knows Martin Boyle, and almost £1 million striker in Vente's obviously hit the ground running so far. So where do you think we can cause Hibs a few problems? You kind of highlighted there Stevenson, Hanlon, a couple of my pals who are Hibs fans mentioned Miller, I think it is, that's been at right back on the right hand side.
So I think Miller started all right this season. I think he's surprised a few people with how he's done. Maybe a wee bit suspect defensively, but he's just solid. Just like a big machine, just keeps going and going and going. Hibs struggle with crosses and with players running right at them, like Hanlon in particular, Hanlon and Stevenson, because I think this is maybe a season too far for him. I mean, as much of a legend as he is, we saw against Motherwell, boy, just coming at their first goal comes down Stevenson's side. The guy just sort of beat him for pace and strength and made him look a bit silly, if I'm honest. Livingston are quite good at being direct running it. No, I'm not talking direct long ball, not being disrespectful, just like getting the ball facing up a defender and kind of going at them.
Yeah.
That's probably your best opportunity.
Yeah, well, certainly I hope we kind of target those areas, because I know we've got joy out of Hanlon, as you mentioned, in the last couple of seasons when Nubly's been up against them in particular. But what are you going prediction-wise then, Matty?
I think Livy haven't had the best start either. Have you? It's like to the season has been a bit up and down.
Yeah, draw with Aberdeen, which we probably could have nicked, and then the result at Ibrox. I mean, Ibrox is a bit of a free hit, and it was kind of 3 goals in the last 15 minutes as well. Yeah. Other than that, we were actually pretty decent in the game. So we are needing to get points on the board sooner rather than later, because I think we've got 5 of the top 6 in our opening 6. So it's a difficult start.
I'll go for 2-0 Hibs.
2-0.
Just because I'm a big idiot, 2-0 Hibs.
And our run of not scoring away from home in the league will continue for another week, sadly. But we've been asking guests, Matty, when they've been coming on, about a player who's played for both clubs, one that you have fond memories of, one that you don't have such fond memories of. So we'll go with the fond memories first. Who's the player that comes to mind for yourself?
So it was a good question. I had a couple that sprung to mind, right? Stuart Lovell and Stefano Mionga were 2 that I liked, but probably my favourite player to have played for both would be big Marvin Bartley. Like, I absolutely love Marvin at Easter Road. But he's the type of player that we're desperately missing just now. And obviously,
by the way, it seems to be the same thing almost every season with Hibs. They seem to be missing that enforcer in the middle of the park, and then the centre half seems to be the 2 areas you constantly regurgitate on recruitment. Why have they not kind of gone in there and found someone? And Bartley kind of, as you say, is the almost role model type player that you would want in there just now.
And he's a lovely guy as well. Like loads of time for Marvin. So he was the one that I love The one that probably doesn't have so many fond memories would have been Patrick Nubuse, who's almost instantly forgettable as a Hibs player, and I don't imagine had a great Livingston career either.
It's funny, he played, so it was an opening day league game against Dundee, and he played for us centre midfield as a trialist, and he was immense. Like, genuinely was borderline unplayable in the game, and I thought, God, who the hell is this guy? We need to tie him down on a deal. And I don't know if John Collins was maybe at Hibs at the time. I would need to kind of look back and see who Hibs manager was, but I think Hibs reserves used to play at Livi, so I don't know if that's maybe the tie-in and how he kind of spotted him. But you guys signed him but loaned him back to us for 3 months, and then he was utter dug me for the following 3 months after he'd got his deal at Hibs. So fair play to him. He's won a contract out of one game.
We were saying just before we came on, his son's just signing for, was it Man City? He said for £1 million, and
so he was obviously a top shagger when he was in Scotland as well.
good genes passed on.
Well, Matty, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Obviously, you're one of the hosts on the Longbangers podcast. You obviously dip in and out of a few podcasts that you guys have up and running. So if anyone wants to tune in, where can they find you?
But best place is Twitter. You'll get us to all our links on Twitter, but we're on your usual Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Just look for Longbangers and you'll find us there.
You've got a few other podcasts on the go as well. Your kind of short bangers, your Heat Bangers one as well, which is really good.
Short bangers. We sort of split them out a wee while ago. Again, on Twitter, you look for short bangers, or you'll find us like YouTube, etc. And the Heat Bangers one's one that we do on mental health. It's just a couple of guys who aren't mental health experts, but just talking about coping with life, really, I suppose.
I'd encourage anyone to tune into the guys because the content they produce is brilliant. But Matty, thank you again for coming on. It's always great to catch up with you, but I hope you have a miserable Saturday afternoon. And I'm sure you'll be wishing the same sentiment to myself as well. You guys hospitality at the weekend?
We are. We've got a wee competition running with Leeds Spirits. That we're in the Pioneers hospitality, which we did last season with them, and it was fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to it. So
there you go. You'll get a few pints down you in that case, and it'll make it even more bearable if we were to win. But thanks again, Matty. Always a pleasure.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. We really appreciate you tuning in every week, and we'd love to hear your feedback. You can leave us a review on iTunes or drop us a message on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, so simply search Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there, and any shares and likes are always appreciated. All our episodes are available on all the usual podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, and we'd love you to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you though, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode that we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. Let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team.
Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the